Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
Hey everybody, thanks and welcome back to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
I'm Dean Reverman.
And we are ready to plug in and get connected. We brought back our special guest, James Korte, with us from our very first podcast on marketing in a crisis. If you haven't listened, I highly recommend you go back and listen to that one. He's going to talk with us a little bit today about some email marketing.
Oh, yes.
But before we get started, I want to first thank our founding members, Elo, Epson, Honeywell, Star Micronics, and Zebra. Thanks so much for your support for this podcast.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
So guys, our first one, we talked a little bit about, some of the things that have changed in our routine in our lives around working in this pandemic. And I guess another question I have related to that is, what have you found yourself doing more or less of during this time? Like, what's changed for you in your life from maybe a day-to-day life perspective?
I got that one first if you want. Or
Yeah,
you want to go,
right
Korte?
ahead. No, please.
So, yeah, we talked a little bit. Sleep. I'm getting more sleep. So I don't have my 45-minute commute one way anymore. So I've been finding myself getting more sleep, which I am using this wearable, right? Connected to my sleep app. And my sleep app is telling me, hey, you hit your goal again. Hey, you hit your goal again, which has been awesome. So sleep has been one of those things that I'm doing more of, I guess. And then activities, which is cool. Find myself doing more walking. I've been riding my bike, which I dearly love, but have not been able to do for like a decade. But I brushed that off and been riding my bikes with my daughter.
We're going to have to talk about that because I need a bike and I don't know anything about what kind of bike I need. But that could be separate.
That's so, yeah, yes. I have a road bike, and which I think are awesome. I grew up on a BMX bike back in the day when I was a kid.
Me too.
Oh my God, BMX was everything. And I tell my daughter this, so from the age of, I don't even remember, 7 to 13 when I got my first drum kit, I was on a bike every single day, just loving it. And so I'm back on that, but I have a road bike that I go on.
Okay.
And then adventures. I find myself doing more adventures, like, on our walks and whatnot. It was funny because I was on a walk I was on a bike ride with Tori, and we have this area in our subdivision where it's fenced off. It's a common area, if you will, but the fence is for a wooded area. And her perspective is, and it's a wood slatted fence, so it's not like a wire fence that you have to get over. But her perspective is, oh, don't go there, it's fenced off. And so I stopped my bike and I hopped under the fence, and started this adventure. And she's looking at me like horrified, like, Dad, what are you doing? Why are you going under this fence? And she literally said, we're not supposed to be going there. And I'm like, it's okay, come on, let's have this. And we turned it into like a Star Wars adventure where she was Rey, I was Finn, and we just kind of explored the little area there. Man, that was really long-winded, but there you go.
Awesome.
I find myself doing more stuff like that during this pandemic.
So no surprise, you took it in a very healthy way. You're doing a lot of more healthy, good things. And whereas a lot of people probably are drinking more and eating more, which I've definitely been guilty of during this period from time to time. That's not what I want to touch on, though. I've got kind of an odd one, maybe, but because I'm spending so much more time at home, I've been thinking about my house a lot. We have a house built in the 1960s, mid-century modern. It was only owned by one other family before us, so the guy, the husband, I guess, that lived there was a woodworker. So there's lots of cool old detail. I've always been in love with my house, but I spend very little time there compared to now, where I spend a lot of time there. So I did what, day 42 quarantine, I organized my entire garage, which was, one of the cool things about the previous owners is they were, this guy was much more of a man's man than I am in terms of the things he could do. And he left all kinds of tools, and I had to pick up, it was probably 100 pounds of roof shingles to throw them away. Just so much stuff that they had left there. And I was glad for it. There's wood scraps, there's glass, there's all kind of stuff. It badly needed a reorganization. So I spent Saturday, all day until 5 p.m. when it started to rain, taking everything out. I reorganized everything. And it's Awesome. And we need a new garage door. We've been thinking about a new roof. And I'm just realizing, again, kind of odd, but I'm thinking, man, this is far and away the most valuable asset we have. And it is worthy of investment.
Yep.
And now that I'm there all the time, it's just, this is another thing I've said to my some of my kids is, because I'm never home or I'm infrequently home at 11 a.m., and the light in our house is awesome at 11 a.m. So just a new appreciation for the home and a new kind of focus.
That was the designer in you coming out.
Oh, really?
Look at the way this light shines on the, on the floor.
You know,
this is awesome.
Every now and again on a Saturday in our main room, we get lots of light, and I'll stop and admire it. But now I'm there every day at 11 a.m. and I go, wow, you guys didn't tell me the light was so great in here at 11. So that's been one. And then the other one is just, being appreciative of, feeling lucky and being appreciative of the company I work for and my coworkers. We've been, there's small, I've got like 4 different chat groups going on. I got one on Facebook. I got one in text message, one with my buddies from high school and college. And we never did this before. We even had a small draft watch party the other day with 5 or 6 of us, people that I don't even talk to necessarily that often in the office, but we've just been making a point to every now and again, check in on each other and chat and stuff like that.
Yeah, those have been cool too. Yeah, no doubt. What about you, John?
It's funny, because I was giving this a lot of thought before. I put this question out there not realizing, hey, I got to answer this too. And not a lot about my life has particularly changed in the sense because I'm kind of a homebody anyway. My wife and I are most comfortable most days just after work, go home, cook some dinner, relax together, spend time with the kid, and just kind of chill, watch some television. We're not, busy people that are out running around all the time. So that particular aspect has not necessarily changed a lot. I kind of mentioned this on our first podcast that I've got to spend more time with my son, which has been awesome. He's at a great developmental stage for learning and interacting, and he's, his vocabulary is growing every day, and I'm finding out just how much of a fun and funny kid he is. And I love getting to actually hang out with him. And
it's cool being part of that process, right?
It really is, yeah. And it's definitely, as I mentioned before, the kind of thing I feel like you miss sometimes when you're shuttling off to school and daycare every day of how much they're learning and developing and changing, I realize.
Absolutely.
Cooking, I wouldn't say I'm cooking more. I do most of the cooking in the household. I love to cook.
Oh, Chef John.
I absolutely love cooking. Right. And honestly, it's something that became a necessity a little bit more when I got married or my wife and I started dating because not that she doesn't like to cook, but she was fond of my cooking and was okay with it. So I just found myself cooking a lot more often.
Nice.
And so now I am finding myself trying out a lot of new recipes, just trying some stuff out, especially when, if you go to the store and potentially something's sold out that you normally would cook and normally can't get.
Substitutions.
Yeah, maybe you're trying some new stuff out. Maybe, when you're going for your pickup, but they're substituting in some different items for you. So maybe you make some improvisation, do things a little differently. So trying out some new recipes. One I got going tonight, I've done it a couple of times, is a little tilapia nuggets, using an air fryer. I got an air fryer.
Oh.
Actually, I got that around my birthday, actually. So it was just before all this broke out and found a good use for it. So you just cut up some tilapia, season them, do a little, panko breadcrumbs on them, put them in the air fryer for
and it works?
10 minutes.
That air fryer thing works?
Yes,
okay.
It really does.
Right,
legitimately
we've
does.
been toying with the idea, at home. Do we get one of those air fryers? I don't know.
It's handier than the stuff that you might normally toss into an oven, fries or nuggets or something. Faster and easier to do that way once you figure out how to use it. So that's kind of been for me. Not massive changes, but some little stuff.
I'm with you on the trying new things though. And so we did the family activity because that's what you do during a pandemic is that everybody. So my wife organized a cooking challenge.
Nice.
So it was my son and me versus my daughters. And, the challenge was to come up with an appetizer. And so she came up with the ingredients, but we didn't know what the ingredients were first. And so, we pulled it together and it actually turned out really awesome. But before that, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but we also made drinks. So we had a cocktail hour, not with the kids. We made alcohol version and non-alcoholic versions, but we had good family activity along that way. I think a lot of people are in the kitchen much more than they were, previously. And maybe doing some of that, which to me is awesome because, I'm not an overly foodie type of person, but I do enjoy a good meal. And there you go.
I have aspirations to learn to smoke meat. I actually have a grill.
Oh, that's right.
One of those fancy pellet grills on the way to my house. I don't know when the heck it's going to show up, but too many people have been smoking meat, so I go, man, I need to smoke some meats. I'm with you guys.
I did learn this yesterday. I don't have a smoker yet, but once you do fire it up, it's not just meat. You're going to think of things that, now that you got it going, throw other stuff in there. Like people will smoke mac and cheese.
I heard people talking about making cookies somehow in some of these smokers.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised. Okay, you'll probably do meat the first time, but then you're going to start, maybe I'll throw some
Get a little
macaroni and
creative.
cheese in there. Throw some
There you
vegetables in there.
Heck yeah.
Smoking on. Hey, we're coming over, by the way.
For sure. Yep.
After you get it done, after you get, in sync with what you're doing, dialed in.
Yeah.
We'll be over for the
We don't want to be the guinea pigs. We want to be there when the finished product's ready. So.
Very smart.
Awesome. All right. Well, James, again, thanks so much for jumping in and joining us. We want to shift gears a little bit and talk about email marketing.
Yes.
So, with our first pod, we talked a lot about marketing in a crisis in general, and digital marketing in general, and kind of the things you should be thinking about and doing before, during, and after. But in particular, we want to talk about email marketing. And the topic, James, that you kind of brought to us is 5 keys to effective email marketing.
Yes.
And I think initially starting off with, how do you find the people that you're marketing to, and how do you get them opted in? How do you keep them on your mail lists? How do you keep people connected?
Sure. So, yeah, first off, email marketing probably been described as the least sexy aspect of digital marketing,
but still tried and true, right?
So important.
Still relevant, yeah.
So important. Maybe. I mean, John, for everybody else that doesn't know this, you and I work very closely together on end user facing digital marketing campaigns. And oftentimes, when we look at the mix of what's working on our campaigns, email marketing is one of the most effective.
Yeah.
I think it results in some of the highest quality leads. Not that it's always about lead generation, but that's a fact. Compared to some of the other channels that we use. So it's very important. And
especially when it's a targeted market and a targeted audience.
Absolutely. And so to your point, where do you find your audience? How do you build your audience? What tools do you need? I guess it depends. First of all, are you in the US? We're in the US. So still, our restrictions around who we can communicate with via email and under what circumstances are much looser compared to Canada or Europe, where they've got some
GDPR,
right? And Castle in Canada, very, very strict. You have to have a very good case and even records to say we have a right to communicate with these people.
Right.
So today in the U.S., not so much. So you can be a little bit more liberal in how you're building your audience. Meaning you could just go into your customer base and pull those people into your CRM tool and just start communicating with them in the US. But as you're adding new contacts, I think it's important to be thinking about the near future and making sure you have that explicit permission and you know exactly what they've enabled you to communicate with them about. So that kind of ties in, the idea of audience building is really reliant upon tools. So at BlueStar, we use Hubspot, which I couldn't be a bigger cheerleader for. We obviously have an enterprise version of HubSpot that we pay for that has all the bells and whistles. But what a lot of people don't know about HubSpot is they have a free forever version that has amazing functionality. So you go over to HubSpot.com, you get signed up. I mean, it's a 10, 15-minute process to create your account. The beautiful thing about it is it's an all-in-one. Not only is it where you store customer information, organize customer information into different lists and segments, and do your email marketing from, it is also a place where if you take, the 2 lines of JavaScript that HubSpot kicks out and put it in the header of your website, it's going to start giving you intelligence you've never had about your contacts. Meaning, what pages are they looking at on your website? If they're filling out forms, if they're registering for webinars, you really get a snapshot of what people have been up to, in addition to which emails they've received, open, click through, et cetera. So, I think you need to establish that tool. And HubSpot's one of many. We can recommend it. We use it. The free tool is very powerful. But Mailchimp is another one that people use to great success. Sendinblue is a lesser known tool that some people have used, but I would definitely tell people to go out and look into that. Free tools, very function and feature rich.
Yeah, and they don't have to be afraid, right, Korte? I mean, first off, it starts with a good CRM, good email marketing system, but you don't have to be afraid of what the tool set can do for you. I know a lot of people, and obviously we're focusing in on email. I think the workflow of a lot of people is to create an email, hit send, walk away. And not really do anything with it because they're maybe afraid or don't know what to do with some of the analytics around it. But folks, you don't have to overthink that. When we look at the success or whatnot, it's not like we're looking at these NASA dashboards of, this person flinched here or whatnot. You're looking for just general information. How did people react? Did they react the way we wanted to? Oh, okay. No, maybe not so much. Sure. So we're going to tweak it, the next time. Or to your point, when you use the collaboration of other analytics of your website data, you can dive in a little bit. Hey, you know what's ringing a bell with our folks right now? It's this. People seem to be reacting to this. So, hey, I'm going to tell my sales team that. Hey, we're going to enable them with some more information. So you don't have to be, just afraid
it's
of
not
getting
as sophisticated as people think.
It's not.
In terms of what
It's
becomes
not.
useful to you.
Just get the high level of what it's trying to tell you. And glean information from that and then react to it accordingly.
Absolutely. And tools such as a HubSpot, and there's a couple other very detailed pieces I want to get into about opting in, what the heck that means, how it works, how to be smart about it. But HubSpot, let me just go into some of those. So when you're signing someone up, one of the tools that HubSpot has available to you is forms. So forms you would place on your website. And it could be as straightforward as sign up to hear from our newsletter, right? Or you could get a little bit craftier where it's enter your email address to download this case study. Both of those are opportunities to opt people in to your CRM where you now have their information and ability to communicate with them. A good piece of advice is asking the right questions when they're signing up. So what are you interested in hearing about, Dean? Now that I've got your email, do you want to know about product promotions and pricing? Do you want to know about, when we have an event in your area, so on and so forth. So asking those questions up front, gathering that important information maybe about where someone's located, and tools like HubSpot, not to get too deep, they capture someone's IP address by default. So if someone's filling out a form you've put on your website and it's a HubSpot form, without even having to ask, it knows you're in Georgia. Great, I didn't need to ask that. And if you don't have to ask it, you obviously want to limit the things you're asking, but you want to enable yourself in the future. So,
And I think that's a really important point there, is that what a tool like that does is that it does enable those who want to control their communications or what they're getting from you, the ability to do that. We know as marketers that, I don't know what the percentage is, but there's a vast amount of people that once you start communicating with them, they're not going to manage it. But for those that do, you now have the ability to do that. And it is important to offer that up to folks because, at the end of the road, you can now start fine tuning your messages depending on what people are interested in.
Absolutely. Yeah. And having, like you said, permission to talk to them about specific things, it's going to affect everything positively in terms of your deliverability rate, in terms of what your statistics look like. So, people typically are looking at things like an open rate. If you're sending an email out to a list of hundreds or even, thousands of people, open rate is one of the key metrics. Click-through rate are one of the key metrics. When you're doing things the right way, sending people what they ask to hear about, all of those numbers are going to look better than just saying, you know what, I'm going to take my whole list of 1,000 people and just send them everything because maybe you don't know enough about them. That's going to negatively affect those numbers and, your unsubscribes and things like that over time. So if you can set the foundation up intelligently in the beginning where you're sending people what's most relevant to them, it's just going to work out better for you. So opting in, getting permission, making sure you know where people are, what they're most interested in are the best practices around audience building and list building.
Agreed.
Definitely agree. So let's talk about the flip side of that too, the opting out process, because you are going to have people that decide, I don't want to get messages from you. And we were kind of talking a little bit about this offline before we got started. How do you approach people that maybe decide, I don't want to get this content from you anymore, but maybe it doesn't necessarily mean all content. How should they approach that?
So great point. And I'm always, as a digital marketing guy, frustrated and annoyed when I get especially a cold email from someone I never asked. You emailed me, no big deal. But if it isn't very clear where I go to unsubscribe, I'm frustrated with that. And then taking it a step further, what smart marketing people do is, yes, you should have an unsubscribe button and it should be legible. So don't play that light gray on white background game. We're making it tough because this is a relationship. We're talking as human beings. If you're doing stuff like that, it's not the right foot to start something out on or to carry something out on. So making it easy to get there. But then once someone's looking at their subscription preferences, it's usually being called, manage your subscription, manage your preferences, make it very clear the different buckets of communication. Because to your point, John, I might get a daily email from you that's just too much. But when you're going to be in Cincinnati and I might want to attend your event, I still want to know about that.
Right.
So thinking about the design and the clarity of that page, both for mobile and for desktop, making it easy to unsubscribe from all. Let's just say you've got someone's personal email and they change jobs, they change industries. Okay, sometimes they're going to walk away and, no hard feelings. In other cases, you're communicating with them too frequently. but give them an option outside of just scorched earth where they're just shutting you down completely.
Right.
Not to say everyone's going to take that, but at least they have the opportunity to go, oh, you know what? I don't hear from BlueStar too often about events, and I do want to know when those are coming around. I'm going to stay subscribed here. And that, again, is a function of a system like HubSpot, where you can manage that subscription page right there in HubSpot. And it's also a setup piece. So when you're first setting up a tool like HubSpot or Mailchimp, you go in and delineate what are the different categories that I'm planning to message people about. So again, product and pricing, events, whatever else it might be. Make sure you delineate those because it's going to serve you best.
Definitely. So let's maybe get into what the email content itself should look like from a personalization standpoint. Like, how personalized do you want to be for each individual person, or for at least the, maybe the industry they're in or the topic that you're talking about? How are we delivering these messages to the right people in a way that's going to resonate with them, where it feels maybe a little more personalized and not just like the standard, like, oh, this is just the message that every single person got in their inbox right now. Even if it actually is, I think there's ways you can make it a little bit more personalized. Talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So, going along with opting people in and being smart about the list they're on, it's not always about having the biggest list. It's about having the right ones. So even though let's say it's a list of 250 people, to your point, that can feel like, and we're not trying to trick anybody, but we are trying to convey to them that we understand who they are and what they care about. So I think some of the key points of personalization are, when possible, send from an individual at your organization. Hopefully someone that this recipient is likely to know. Oh, it's Dwayne Roebuck. I just saw Dwayne 2 months ago. I wonder what he's talking to me about. Right. And there's going to be instances where maybe it makes more sense for it to come from the corporate entity. You're talking about new policy change. Even then, maybe it comes from the CEO, the COO, the director of marketing, or what have you. So think about who it's coming from. So it's more of an actual conversation between people. But then the personalization can extend beyond that. I think about email marketing. So we're sending out an email because ultimately we're informing our customer about something, and or we're looking for them to take some action. So I always think about this. I can build a beautiful landing page, tested it for conversion. I've got great assets. I'm telling a great story on the page, but how am I going to get people there? Email is going to be a big driver. So I think about email as the two hurdles. There are two hurdles related to email before I get you to this shiny, beautiful web page that I've built. Number one is the subject line. If I never get you to open the email, you're definitely never going to read it. You're never going to end up where I want you to be. If I get you to open it, so that's hurdle number one, is the subject line. Number two is the body of the email. So I got your attention. Hopefully I didn't do that through trickery. I think there are some clever ways to be, compelling or what have you to capture someone's attention, but you never want to trick them. You don't want to set an expectation then not deliver on it in the message. So number two is, how can you personalize the body of your message to, again, make it feel relevant to a person and to ultimately get them to where you want to send them. So Campaign Monitor, which is, an industry publication that publishes reports on email marketing, says emails with personalized subject lines have a 26% higher open rate. So that might look like...
That's pretty compelling.
Yeah, it really is. And I find myself always considering, is there a place? And it's not just someone's first name. The most common you'll see is, hi, Dean, here's your NerdWallet update for the week. Right. It could also be, here's how variable company name BlueStar could benefit from X. So tying in not just always someone's first name, but maybe their company, maybe their locale, here's how marketers in Cincinnati are doing, X, Y, and Z. So always be thinking about that. And something I mentioned in a previous podcast, but it's worth mentioning here, is it's always worth going through an exercise and maybe even, engaging some other minds, not just, here's my first thought, it seems pretty good, let's rock with it. It's, let's really go into this and write 6 or 8 or 10 different subject lines and then ask people, what would you be most interested to open? And don't forget that it's not just about what are you most interested to open. What is also giving me a really good idea of what I'm going to see. Because open rate is no good if click-through rate isn't also good, right? You can get a bunch of people to open an email, but if ultimately they open it and go, this isn't what I thought.
So the subject line, you hear about it, but it is very important, and it's worth pausing and, to your point, doing iterations of it. It's that worth it, because we all have that behavior. You're reading, depending on if you're mobile, if you're on your laptop, whatever. you're going to look at the subject line. What is this person? Why are they trying to grab my attention? So it is very critical. And also the intro text, if you will, because a lot of that can be seen on preview. So, giving some
thought to that.
Yes, right.
And I'm just realizing and looking at my notes that this is something we're going to dive into separately too. But yeah, I mean, subject line, it's so key. And you're right. I mean, mobile is such a big consideration as well.
Yeah. But back to the personalization, and I think we've had a pretty good luck doing that. I agree with you. And obviously the statistics show that if you personalize it to a certain degree, you're going to get better open rate. Korte, what do you think about, though, and we touched on a little bit on the content, though. Okay, so and we'll get into the subject line perhaps, but the content of the email, I've always been of the opinion that yes, you're trying to get them to the landing page where they can get more information as it relates to an email. Mm-hmm. It always makes me cringe when I get an email that is very verbose, has a lot of information, unless it's a newsletter. Newsletter, okay, I'm expecting there to be chunks of information, of snackable information that I can decide, do I want to click on that or whatnot. But if it's just an email communication, I'm of the opinion that it should be brevity's better. Boil it down. Yes. You do not want to throw everything that you're trying to say into the email itself. What are some, and I know I'm going a little off script here, what are some tips there, on the content side?
Just as listening to you talk, I'm thinking to myself, you should assume that you are in competition with lots of other notifications.
Because you are.
Because you are. So don't think that just because this email is important to you, that the other person it's important to them.
Right.
Especially in a mobile first world, it should be, we've talked about clarity before. I think about a lot of different marketing messaging, whether it's an email, an ad on LinkedIn, as kind of a billboard of sorts. Whet my appetite. If you've already assumed you're sending me this email, there's already an assumption there that I'm going to care about this topic. So be clear. Definitely balance the design elements of an email with simplicity. Mm-hmm. The more to the point you can be, the better. Like you said, a lot of people's mindset is, well, if I've got their attention, I have to tell them everything.
Right.
Well, when you try to do that, you're not going to get their attention.
You're just not.
If you can be bold and clear and then say, if you're interested in this, learn more here. Mm-hmm. Now you've got my attention. Now you have the ability to get me to a landing page with videos and statistics. And, even then I think copywriting for the web is an art. And copywriting in 2020, and really this has been the case for, a decade, you have to be economical with your words.
I think it's critical. I really do. I'll just restate it. It just makes me cringe when I see emails where people just aren't taking just a little bit of time. As we talked about here, the personalization it is great, but just take a little bit of time. You do your initial draft, and maybe it's 300 words of content. I constantly ask myself, okay, can I say it shorter? Can I bring brevity and just boil it all down? Am I still saying what I want to say? But I've now added that level of brevity, and usually I feel a lot better about it after in the iteration. It doesn't take long. It's a 10, 15 minutes most kind of a process where you're just kind of boiling things down, and hey, I could say this with deleting words. I know you're a wordsmith, John, so I may be preaching to the choir here a little bit, but right? I mean, those are some. What are your tips of kind of? Because I think you're awesome at writing and really kind of boiling it down. Do you have tips when it comes to that?
A lot of it does revolve around brevity, and it's something I've actually had to teach myself too, because I do like to write, and because I do like the words that I put out there. Mm-hmm. I do have a tendency, I feel sometimes, to write too much. So I think one of the biggest tips I offer people is don't ever just write something and then just click send. Because for one, you have no idea what kind of errors you might have it. Our email programs in Word and whatnot are great at finding punctuation errors or grammatical errors and spelling errors and stuff. But sometimes just rereading it through it again, you never know what you might have missed or might have worded improperly. And I'm always amazed when I get a professional email from a company that has glaring errors in it, stuff that I immediately spot and go, and cringe at, and it's the kind of stuff that, believe it or not, does kind of take away from your credibility a little bit. Now, it's one thing if it's a personalized message you're just firing off to back and forth with somebody.
Sure, right, yeah.
But if you're talking about a professional message,
a marketing message.
Yeah, especially depending on the topic too, how serious the topic may or may not be, and there's a glaring error in it, that ruins your credibility right off the bat. But I think the other part then of that is kind of what you were talking about, like the block of text and expectations is if I get in there and feel like I'm seeing way too much, and if I'm looking at an email before I'm getting ready to sit in and think like, man, there's just so much here. There's way too much content. I start figuring out how can I whittle this down? Where am I saying the same stuff twice? Where can I just take out a few words here and there? And just start
or let them
that.
ask themselves the question, well, what about this? Click to learn more.
Yeah.
Let them have a few questions. You can't tell them everything. Tell them what's most important.
Yeah.
John, you reminded me of one of my favorite quotes.
Great
and I'm
point.
loving that I have the opportunity to use this quote. And it's been attributed to like 3 different people over time. It's apparently a very old quote. And it is, I apologize for the length of this letter. I was short on time. And it indicates that you would have had the ability to make it shorter and more concise if you had, but I'm in a hurry, so I'm just spewing. I know I'm guilty of that. I am like the king of long-winded emails. And sometimes even when I spend 40 minutes and really craft them, there's just a lot of information to go in there. I'm a big fan of the written word as well. But I love that idea that it's, if I had more time, I would have been not as long-winded.
Right.
But because I'm in a hurry, I'm just going to hit you with everything. So
and you're expecting an answer, and I've already taken 20 minutes to write this out, and I don't want to take another 10 minutes to figure out how it should be edited down.
I do find myself, even in personal emails, often doing that, where I write all my raw thoughts, and then I go, okay, let me check this for tone.
Gotta boil it
let
down.
me say what I said, see what I said 3 times, and sometimes being clear even means, adding a word or two, instead of a pronoun, you restate what you're actually talking about.
Well, and the reason why I went down that wormhole a little bit in my own mind when we were talking about personalization is that, one thing about personalization, okay, you can say, hey, Dean, I've got this message for you, but I also think of it in the way of how am I respecting that person's time? It's in order for me to personalize a message to you, I want to convey that I respect your time. And one of the best ways that I can do that is boil down exactly what I'm trying to say to you in this one communication in its essence. Maybe I'm trying to tell you too much and I need to break that into multiple communications, but I'm going to do that because I respect your time. That's, you see what I'm saying? Yes. That's how I was kind of getting to the personalized type of thing. I love it when people show me respect, if you will, through the fact that they've given it a little bit of critical thought. I feel it's important for you to have this information, this marketing communication, but I'm only going to give you this little tidbit, and hopefully I've piqued your interest enough. If you're interested, click here, find out more. Okay, now I can open the door a little bit wider on the content that I'm going to give you. But if you don't react to it, okay, moving on. I've respected your time. I've made it personal to you in the sense that, you see what I'm saying?
You can make a quick decision on whether or not this message was important to you.
Right.
I think that's a key, just being respectful of people's time that runs across so many pieces of business, but also in email. 100% agree.
Well, it is because we all get bombarded with it. I mean, especially now during this pandemic, I was talking to some folks at work, and maybe this is the way I should have answered your question on the front end. What do you find yourself doing more of? Email. It used to be in the office environment, people would just swing by with a quick question. Hey, Dean, can blah, 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 whatever it is. The questions are still being asked. It's just now it's in an email, right? Yeah. So I find myself doing a lot more email. But again, to the point, you are competing with hundreds of others of messages out there. Personalization's great. Make sure that the quality of the content that you're serving them is meaningful, and you're going to build a little bit of trust there along the way. Yeah. Anyway,
to wrap that particular section up, I think even just thinking about your own personal inbox, think about your inbox and how big and full it might get. I mean, even if I try to be fairly studious with my inbox, but sometimes it just gets out of control. And think about what messages stand out when you're looking through your inbox and which ones are the ones you're skipping over immediately or just flat out deleting without even bothering with them. And if you start thinking about that should help you think about what it is you need to be putting out on the other end, because everyone else is facing the same bill of measure, potentially even worse.
Yeah, and that's almost a perfect segue. I don't know if you did this by design or not into deliverability, but especially that's true in my personal inbox. When I go into my Gmail, and if it's okay, I'll kind of segue into the deliverability topic as well. And I know a lot of people have Gmail these days. They segment your inbox into your main inbox, your promotions, and whatever else, social or what have you. And so to your point, what are the commonalities about those emails that not only, I'll make this 2 points, that get into your key or your main inbox? And that is what deliverability is about. It's one of those topics that everyone's heard the word deliverability and you think, how many people, had that weren't hard bounced, meaning their email still exists. My message actually got into their inbox, or should say better, was received by their mail server. But just because it was received successfully by a mail server doesn't mean it didn't get caught in spam, which is the worst, or was segmented into promotions or social. Because man, I tell you what, it takes me 5 seconds to go into Gmail, go to social, select all, and then I just look for the one I don't want to delete. Is there anything in here that I don't want to delete? No, here's something from a sporting goods store. Here's something from 3 different apps I've downloaded. But unless it really catches my eye, and there are very few that do, delete them all. But then what's common about the emails that I do say, oh, I got it, if I'm not ready to read it yet, I don't want to delete it. There are emails that come from individuals, right? Usually. There are very few companies that kind of get through that filter. Some of them, of course, but usually it's coming from an individual. So we mentioned that in a personalization, send from someone at your company. Subject lines that look like they're written by humans as well. You're not always going to be able to achieve that, but an email Dean might send me on a personal level, it's going to be a few words, next Monday or, the podcast next week. And I'm like, oh, that's from Dean. I know it. I can see it. I can sniff it out from a mile away. So thinking about, crafting, again, it's a lot of times those details and the tactical things are really the difference between getting into the right inbox, and then getting opened and all that good stuff. So on that topic, deliverability it's a pretty quick one for me. Again, it's focusing on reaching the right inbox. So in an Outlook environment like we use at BlueStar, it's really just about spam and then the main inbox. But realize that a lot of contacts, especially end users for some of our customers, are using, personal type web or email services like a Gmail. So you want to do what you can to reach their main inbox. How do you do that? We already touched on a few things. Some of the other things are coding your HTML emails properly, limiting HTML in emails, and limiting images in emails. Images are very important to be in emails still. But if you can get away with a mostly plain text message with 1 or 2, a logo and maybe a small animated GIF that illustrates some concept, that is going to get you in the right inbox more often than something that is pure HTML and just, chock full. Maybe it's purely, we've all received emails that are purely images. There aren't any, normally HTML rendered text. Right. So that's one of the things. And the good news on that front is services like Hubspot and Mailchimp kind of take care of that for you. They've got plain text templates. They've got, simple HTML templates that do a nice job of that for you. So you don't have to be a technical wizard. We also touched on this before, but one of the things that mail servers will look at is if you have included an unsubscribe link in making managing subscriptions easy. All of those doing business the right way considerations will over time affect deliverability rates. And then the last one that I'll mention is, and this is something we've recently gone through at BlueStar, removing inactive and unengaged contacts from your CRM. So over time, if your domain sending reputation, which is, marketing speak, is negative because, you're sending to people who have, unsubscribed or people who mark your email communications as spam, these are things that are going to affect you negatively. So when you can get rid of some of the, excess in your contacts and you're just communicating with those people who you've been given permission to communicate with, people who are opening your emails, if not clicking through them, all of these things are going to positively affect deliverability over time.
So think about that. You spent all this time crafting the message, you got the right subject line, but you didn't go through the iteration of cleaning up your contacts or making sure, right? And now your message is getting delivered into the spam filter. You think it's getting delivered, but it's not. And so people are not seeing it. So they're all interconnected, right?
Yeah. And I guess the very last thing to say is test this, because the one thing we didn't say is what the bulletproof way into that main inbox is for a Gmail or a Yahoo or whatever. Nothing is black and white, and that's by design. It's the same thing about organic search results. You have to experiment. So do that with your own people. Send emails to your own people and see where it ends up. See how, minorly tweaking, stripping out some of the images, how that affects, your deliverability and where you end up in the inbox.
Great. Well, before we wrap this up, I do have one other quick question. It wasn't on the original notes, but it occurred to me because we've talked a little bit about this in our day-to-day work of doing marketing for some of our partners. Is it better to go after, like when you're collecting emails, do you think it's more important to try to get a business email or a personal email or both? Or because sometimes I feel like we work with people that think like, oh, I got a personal email, that's going to be more opportunity for them to ignore me. But you can ignore your business email just as readily too. So does it make a difference?
It's a great point. And gosh, I feel like I can see both sides to this.
Yeah.
I guess ideally over time, I'd love to have both. Because the huge pro of a personal email address is that it's unlikely to change.
Right.
You can change jobs, but James M. Korte at Gmail I've had for a decade, and
Right.
we'll continue to have it for a long time. But I do think there's maybe a psychological component we've talked about as well before in terms of if you're trying to sell me on a digital marketing tool, I would react differently if it's in my BlueStar Inc. email inbox. Maybe consider it if it's a well-crafted email more so than I would if it's in my Gmail, where I kind of think to myself without really thinking it, this is the wrong place for this.
Yeah.
But again, if you do things the right way and you're compelling and you get me to open it, you have just as good of a shot of getting my intention in either. But I will admit that I have a little bit of a different mindset, expectations for the types of emails. I mean, man, I am much more swift to delete emails in my personal inbox than I am at work.
Sure.
I can still pretty quickly sniff out, a cold email versus a company that I work with or a coworker, obviously. But yeah, I do think it's worth looking into. So I would say don't immediately write off a personal email because that is something that's likely to continue to be valid.
Right.
Agreed.
However, I would try to work, and I think one of the simple tactical things we consider is when you're creating a form, whether it's a form on Facebook or on LinkedIn or one on your own website, if you're prioritizing a business email, then label your form field that way, work email.
Right.
Doesn't guarantee anything, but it's worth that effort, I guess I'd say.
Okay, great. All right. Well, hey, once again, I want to thank James for hopping in and helping us out, talking about email marketing. We're going to shift over into our recurring segments here on the podcast. The first of those is value to the VAR. We want to make sure that our reseller listeners feel like what they get their talking points out of this. Like, what's the most important aspect of what we've discussed today? So, question for all of us, what would be some of the best current email topics that resellers should be thinking about? And obviously, in some way, we can relate this maybe to the current pandemic because that's the situation we're in right now. But, I want this to be kind of an evergreen thing. If someone's listening to this podcast a couple years down the road for the first time, what kind of topics are the ones that you think that people should be getting out there to people on a regular basis?
I'm going to take, if it's okay with you, John, topic would be a difficult question for me to answer.
Okay.
But where I'll go with it is leaning into the new tools. Dean, I think it was your comment where you said, don't be scared. Mm-hmm. These things aren't as sophisticated as you think. Mm-hmm. It is very important that you go out and learn these tools, realize what they can do for you. So do that. And because we didn't dive as deeply into subject lines as I think we initially intended, I'll just say, so get a hold of the tools, experiment with them, go and do some certifications or do some training around them. But when it comes to think hard about your subject lines, it's such an important hurdle to get over. Keep them short, 50 to 60 characters. Think about the most important words in that subject line. And if you can, keep them in the front. Mm-hmm. I think, Dean, as well, you made the comment, always be thinking about how your subject line and the preview text, I think they call it, work together. So when you're looking at your inbox, you're seeing a subject line, and then you usually, by default, it'll pull in the first words that show up in the email. Mm-hmm. But some clients, like a Hubspot, like a Mailchimp, will allow you to override that default functionality and write in a preview or a pre-header text, as some tools call it. Think really hard about that stuff, and always be thinking mobile first is the last thing. Mm-hmm. Realize that, man, half, if not a greater than half of the people are going to be looking at your email communications on a smartphone device. So be thinking simplicity, be thinking one column, brevity, like we said before.
Yeah. The way I would answer that is and I don't, coming from a topic standpoint, if you will. Back when I worked for a reseller, was in the reseller world, if you will, we saw a lot of value in creating success stories. So if you're looking for a topic that works now, because I'm sure all of our partners, all of our customers, the reseller customers, even software company customers, they're looking at new situations, new solutions, things of that nature. From a topic standpoint, consider writing a piece or promoting a piece, like a case study, that you can then send out to your ecosystem. You don't have to unveil if you did something unique with a customer or something like that is proprietary. Mm-hmm. You don't have to really relate maybe the secret sauce. But I can tell you that from a topic standpoint, I think people react really well when they see what other people are doing. And that is certainly the case in a pandemic where a lot of it's new. What are we all doing to react to this? So if you have a topic that's around a use case or a case study of a success story where this restaurant's seeing a little bit of success because of this, and I'm going to share that with the other restaurants in my ecosystem, or this manufacturer is seeing, this type of success from this new implementation, so that they can now affect last mile delivery or whatever the use case might be. Consider writing a topic around that and sharing it with some of your other customers. Again, you don't have to give up the secret sauce, but you can share that with them, because I think that's a genuine way. If I'm the end user and I receive this, oh, well, look at what this restaurant's doing, or what this retailer is doing, or what that manufacturer is doing. They'll see it as a genuine gesture, if you will, of getting it.
To build on that, you made me think more to the real question you asked, John. Something to keep in mind is it doesn't have to be your story.
Oh, right.
Being a curator of interesting, innovative stories that are helpful to your customer. And I think there's a balance to manage there. You don't want to just be sharing, people have their own news feeds. That's why people are on Twitter and follow the accounts they want and have their favorite news outlets. But if there's something really relevant going on in your industry that you think your customer could learn from, even if it isn't yours, if it's yours, that's even better. If you can tell your own story and how you helped a customer do, or realize new efficiencies or what have you. But keep that in mind, that I think people are oftentimes looking for, and one of the things we preach to people is, the idea of nurturing. That applies to not just prospective customers, but existing. How do I stay in touch with my customers so they remember I exist in a meaningful way without always it having to be me creating new? Because, resources can be limited or whatnot. Keep an eye out for the really interesting, helpful resources out there, even if they aren't your own. And think about, hey, if this would be helpful to my customer, maybe I share this. Don't overdo it, but it's a clever way to stay in touch and to truly be helpful to people.
And a good way to build out some information on that landing page that you're ultimately trying to get them to get to consume a little bit more information.
For sure.
Did you have an answer?
I really don't have much else to add to this.
Oh, okay.
It's, I realize the question was a little on the generic side, but I feel like you guys did a great job answering it. And I'm totally with both responses there. And Korte especially, we didn't really get into it too much in the main topic point, but the idea of mobile first, I've always talked with this. I'm insanely frustrated whenever something is not compatible with a mobile device, whether it's a website or an email, something where I click into it and immediately realize this was not built for me to look at in this particular format. And that, to me, that's inexcusable at this point. It's 2020. Smartphones have been a thing. Mobile devices have been a thing for a long time. Most of us, are not engaging with our email on a desktop client server anymore.
If I've got to pinch in to read your email, you've already lost. It better be an email about something really, time sensitive and important to me on a personal level. Otherwise, too much effort. Really good point.
Exactly. For that. All right. Well, hey, our last question we want to talk about. This is kind of the fun part of the podcast. We're going to talk about what's TEConnecting with us. These are the things that we're reading, seeing, doing, using, playing with, have heard about in the tech world that are fascinating to us. Doesn't necessarily have to be about the channel that we're working in. Could be just whatever's resonating with us right now. James, what do you have?
So I've actually got a very cool technology that I started playing with a number of years ago, totally put to the side, and then as a result of a recent conversation with a colleague who's out of our LATAM office, re-engaged with, and that is Duolingo.
Oh, yeah.
So I know there's been a lot of conversation around, hey, if you're just getting by right now, that's okay. And some people trying to be ultra productive. Again, it was just a comment, hey, I understood you're trying to learn Spanish. And I kind of went, I was trying to learn Spanish and I haven't done anything about it for years. And I hop back into Duolingo, and I will just say, and I'm sure there are other tools out there, it is an awesome experience. It's been really cool. From my phone to my tablet to my desktop computer, it is such a cool way, to the point where I haven't used it yet, but I've downloaded the Duolingo ABC for my soon-to-be 5-year-old just for reading and language skills, because man, it's got me feeling really good. I'm still in the very basics, but my percentage of correct answers and the stuff I'm retaining, it's really cool. So we'll see if this continues after we come out of this, and I'm not spending nearly as much time at home. But yeah, Duolingo, check it out if you're interested in learning, another language.
That is ambitious. Yes,
I know. I almost like hesitated to bring it up, but it is truly something. I'm on like a 7-day streak, and I've been killing it. And man, it is. It's not just that it's neat to be learning something new. The experience of this tool itself, the way it was built, even on the web,
really intuitive.
It's really great. Yeah.
Very nice. So in the new normal of working from home, K-cups. Using these little coffee thing. Okay, so my wife went out and bought one of these Cuisinarts, not the Keurig, but it's just a Cuisinart. We needed a new coffee maker, but she came back and it's got this little thing off to the side for the K-cup. And I'm like, what did you buy that for? We got the coffee maker. You just make coffee. She's like, you'll use it. Believe you me, you'll use it. And I'm, okay, whatever. This was around Christmas time. Lo and behold, I'm at home now working a lot and I need another cup of coffee. And how frustrating is it to go down, the caraffe's empty. No, I got this little genius K-cup thing over here. Sold on that whole concept of being able to brew almost instantaneously a nice fresh cup of coffee.
Yeah, I do appreciate that as well.
Man, a new appreciation. So that's impacting me right now.
Yeah, there you go. Nice. Well, for me, an app called Letterboxd. Letterboxd without the second E. So it's letter BOXD.
Got it.
And this is an app for movie lovers, which I am definitely a movie lover. And I don't get to watch as many movies as I like anymore. I do more TV than movies these days. But I've been trying to, especially during this time, force myself to sit down and watch a movie at least once or twice a week. Something maybe I haven't seen or wanted to visit. Well, Letterboxd is a community built for movie fans, and it's your standard app where you go in, you can find movie recommendations, you can rate and review them, and connect with other folks, follow them if you want. I heard about it from another podcast I listened to, Movie Crush, which was talking all about this app, and like the host is actually on there routinely reviewing and talking about movies. And what I really find fun about it is it gives this option to create curated lists of movies. And what I've found is the users that have been doing this I've only been at it for maybe a couple months, but the users have been at it for a while, I don't know how long the app has been out there, have started creating curated lists of the moment, like excellently, smartly curated list of the moment. So for instance, as soon as the pandemic was hitting and we were stuck at home, people were starting to create lists like the perfect movies to watch to lighten your mood at home, or the perfect, contagion movies, like the movie Contagion and Outbreak, like lists of movies, relevant to, disease spread and stuff like that. And it's fun and fascinating to see these lists. And sometimes you'll get into them and you'll look at them and you're like, I don't understand what they're getting at. And then you start diving into it. And it's almost like an interesting little puzzle where you start seeing, they may not give you any information, but you start seeing all the different movies and you start piecing it together and realizing like, I get what they're going at. I think somebody even did one where they literally like created an entire paragraph of words from the titles of the movies. So they
I got you.
Like, and it was some kind of a famous, paragraph or piece of writing, maybe from like Shakespeare or something. And somehow they used the titles of movies and the screen art, the cover art from the movies to spell out this entire piece.
That's pretty cool.
So stuff like that just fascinates me. And it's a fun app to play around on.
John, you just made me think of something. This is going to seem out of nowhere, but I know you'll appreciate it. If anyone's looking for a new series to watch right now, and it's not a new series, but one that you haven't watched before, I just want to give a shout out to Mr. Robot.
Hard agree.
John and I are huge fans of Mr. Robot.
I'm unaware of this.
It is one of the best TV series I've ever watched. It's
Mr. Robot.
It's because of my interest, but man, it's good. Rami Malek is the lead in it. He plays a kind of a vigilante hacker who's got some, other issues going on as well. But man, it is an amazing series. It was USA, so I imagine.
Yeah, I think it's on Amazon Prime maybe now. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Where it's streaming at the moment. But
man, it's good. It was one of those I wish I hadn't already watched it. Maybe I'll even go back and watch it.
It's that rare series too that sticks the landing. Like we both agreed when we got to the final episode. We both, and this was of course after watching Game of Thrones a few months before. I mean, very disappointed with that ending, but we actually both agreed this show stuck the landing. We very much enjoyed it.
So good.
Yeah. Awesome.
Very nice.
All right. Well, thanks for TEConnecting, guys, and it's time for us to unplug. We have wrapped up another episode. I want to thank James once again for being on. Thanks to our founding sponsors. We appreciate you as always.
Absolutely.
Until next time, for Dean Reverman, I'm John Martin. Plug in and get TEConnected. Thanks.
The TEConnect podcast is brought to you by Elo. It's new, it's big. Elo's 4K 65-inch interactive digital signage is here. The 6553L is a touchscreen perfect for everything from endless aisle to collaborative meetings, conferencing, and whiteboarding.
Available with either PCAP or infrared touch technologies, the professional-grade large format display is ideal for both captivating digital experiences in public places and engaging communication in the enterprise. The 6553L comes standard with Qwizdum's robust annotation and whiteboarding software, while ELO Edge Connect offers a wide range of peripherals that can be added or removed as needs change.
ELO has your back with a standard 3-year warranty and complimentary on-site exchange. Peace of mind for customers who simply need their signage technology to work. Contact your BlueStar representative to learn more. Pharmacies are a vital part of healthcare system, providing medicines, therapeutics, vaccines, and critical healthcare supplies.
Honeywell's lineup of hands-free and handheld barcode scanners provides pharmacies the tools to help protect staff, patients, and customers while allowing for increased productivity. Their ability to accurately read 1D and 2D barcodes the first time eliminates wasted seconds from every transaction, while minimizing unnecessary contact and allowing for servicing of more customers. Honeywell's barcode scanners are simple to integrate with existing IT infrastructure, shortening ramp-up times and getting critical tech in place.
Contact your BlueStar representative to evaluate your unique needs and see why the Honeywell Pharmacy solutions are the right choice for meeting current and long-term needs. Printing supplies can impact everything from printhead lifespan to operational efficiency. That's why Zebra designs, produces, and rigorously pre-tests their own line of thermal printing supplies to ensure consistent, optimized performance in your Zebra printer and peace of mind for you and your customers.
Zebra only uses consistent, high-quality materials for every run. They rigorously test all materials and apply 3 decades of thermal printer experience to providing the best supplies quickly and with minimal interruption to ongoing operations.
For industry-leading quality, service, and thermal printing expertise, choose Zebra Certified Supplies. Exceptionally consistent, consistently exceptional. For more information, check out Zebra's microsite on BlueStarInc.com.